The morning air felt crisp and calm as families and friends gathered at Pine Ridge Summer Camp one last time. The sun rose in soft colors, painting the tall pines in shades of gold and green. Sarah stood among the group, her heart full of many years of worry, hope, and relief. Emma and Mia stood close by, holding Sarah's hands. Jacob and the twins, Alex and Aaron, stood behind them, their faces warm with quiet smiles. Though they were grown now, they wore the same camp spirit in their eyes. Counselors from long ago returned to their hair grayed, but their love for the camp undimmed. Mr. Harris, still tall and gentle, stood beside Mrs. Barnes, the camp director who had led the search so many years ago. Special Agent Kelly Thornton from the FBI came with them, carrying a small box that held Tony's whistle pack and the faded pages of his sketchbook. The box was simple wood, carved with Tony's name and a tiny eagle, his favorite drawing. Sarah stepped forward and opened the box. She lifted the whistle pack and let its soft yellow canvas rest in her palm. It felt light, like a promise. She unwrapped the newspaper that had hidden it for decades. The paper was old and brittle, but the headline still told the story. 7 children vanish at camp. And below them, mystery remains unsolved. Sarah gently smoothed the edges. Emma and Mia knelt beside her, touching the pack as if it were a treasure. Special Agent Thornton spoke softly, so everyone could hear. This whistle pack was lost for nearly 40 years. We found it here, under the floorboards of the old ranger's cabin. It led us to the truth long hidden. Though we cannot bring Tony back, we can honor his memory and give his family the closure they deserve. She set the box down carefully, and the small group bowed their heads in respect. Then Sarah stood again and took a deep breath. Pack belonged to Tony, she said, her voice steady. He was our friend. We were children when he disappeared, and we could not save him. But today we remember him as he was kind, curious, full of life. This camp was his home, and these trees were his friends. We thank Pine Ridge for keeping his secret safe until we could find him. Tears glistened on her cheeks, but she smiled too, as though a weight had lifted from her heart. One by one, each person came forward to place something in the box beside Tony's things. Emma laid down a small drawing of Eagle Rock that Tony had made years ago. Mia placed her favorite teddy bear, worn and soft, the one she had clutched. On the day Tony vanished, Jacob dropped in a smooth stone from the waterfall, pool, a symbol of their adventures and the bond they shared. Alex and Aaron placed 2 pine cones, side by side, to honor their lost friend. Mr. Harris added an old compass that Tony had used on their first hike. Mrs. Barnes placed a silver key she found in the cabin, a key that opened the old gate latch. Sarah remembered. When the box was full, Agent Thornton closed the lid. She handed a small golden lock to Mrs. Barnes and asked her to seal it. Mrs. Barnes clicked the lock shut and handed the key to Sarah. Keep it safe. She said, let it remind you that truth can be hidden, but not lost forever. Sarah took the key and slipped it into her pocket. The group walked together to the row of trees planted in Tony's honor. Each tree bore a small plaque engraved with the date of his disappearance and his name. At the base of the newest tree, the one planted this year, they formed a circle. Sarah, Emma, Mia, Jacob, Alex, and Aaron stood hand in hand. Mr. Harris, Mrs. Barnes, and Agent Thornton stood just outside the circle, watching with gentle smiles. Sarah knelt and laid the whistle pack on the soil next to the tree. Emma placed the drawing beside it, and Mia set her bear down gently. Jacob buried the stone in the earth, tucking it close to the tree's roots. Alex and Aaron covered the pine cones with a small pile of dirt. Together, they whispered words of farewell and hope. "We miss you, Tony," they said softly. "We'll always be part of our lives, our camp, and these woods. You rest in peace." Sarah stood and reached into her pocket for the silver key. She held it up to the sun, and it sparkled like a tiny star. "This key opens the lock on the box that holds your things," she said. "It also opens our hearts to remember you with love, not fear. We will tell your story, share your laughter, and keep your spirit alive." She placed the key at the base of the tree, beside the whistle pack and the drawing. A gentle breeze stirred the pine branches, and a few needles drifted down like green snow. It felt as though the forest itself joined their farewell. Emma and Mia looked up at the rustling leaves, and the twins smiled, imagining Tony's laughter echoing among the trees. Mr. Harris stepped forward. "I have one more promise," he said. "Pine Ridge will forever be a place of safety and hope. We will share Tony's story with every new camper. We will teach them to watch out for one another, to speak up if they feel lost, and to never give up on finding the truth." He looked at the children. "You are the ones who brought hope back to this camp. You have done a great thing today." Mrs. Barnes led everyone back to the main clearing, where a large wooden bench stood beneath a new picnic pavilion. She had arranged tables with snacks, cold lemonade, and fresh fruit, simple treats that Tony had always loved. Families and counselors mingled, sharing memories and stories. A gentle music played on a small speaker, a soft tune that spoke of home and healing. As the gathering continued, Sarah saw children playing by the old footbridge, their laughter light and free. Emma and Mia joined them, and the twins threw pebbles into the creek. Jacob helped build a small dam of stones, and Mr. Harris watched, pride shining in his eyes. Special Agent Thornton stood to the side, talking quietly with a camp counselor who had helped her with the search. Sarah took a seat on the bench and breathed deeply. The years of waiting, the hours of worry, and the nights of dreams about Tony all felt like part of a long journey. Now, here in the sunlit clearing, she felt a gentle peace. She closed her eyes and listened to the wind in the pines, the murmur of voices, and the soft gurgle of the creek. Each sound was a reminder that life goes on and that hope once found sparks new beginnings. Later, as the sun dipped low, Sarah walked to the ranger's cabin with Emma, Mia, and the twins. The door stood open now, its lock removed. Inside, it was still dusty, filled with old boxes and crates. But Sarah noticed a patch of new paint on the doorframe, a fresh coat of green that matched the forest. She reached out and ran her hand over it. "This place holds our memory," she said softly. "But now it is part of our healing too." They stepped outside together. A wooden sign hung by the door, carved in simple letters, "Tony's Cabin." Underneath, a line read, "Never forget, always protect." The cabin would remain as a quiet memorial, a reminder to future generations of campers that they must look out for one another and speak up if something feels wrong. As evening settled, the group returned to the clearing. Lanterns glowed softly, and the last light of day faded from the sky. Families hugged and said their goodbyes. Special Agent Thornton shook hands with each of the grown children. "Thank you," she said. "You've kept your promise to find the truth. You've changed the course of history for this place." Sarah nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she replied. "It's for never giving up." When the camp was empty and the visitors had gone, Sarah lingered with Emma and Mia by the new picnic pavilion. The lanterns still glowed, and the night was quiet. She looked at her sisters and smiled. "We did it," she said. "We found closure after so long." Emma and Mia nodded, their faces soft with relief. "Tony would be proud," Mia whispered. Together, they walked back to the line of trees. Under the tallest pine, Sarah paused and placed her hand on the trunk. "Goodbye, Tony," she said as if speaking to a friend. "You are with us always." Emma and Mia did the same, their small hands pressing into the rough bark. The twins stood beside them, arms around each other, and closed their eyes. The forest around Pine Ridge was silent, but not empty. The pines whispered promises of protection. The creek murmured tales of days gone by, and in the hush between the trees, the memory of a small boy with a curious heart and a bright whistle lived on. The story of the 7 children, their vanished summer, the clue found in 2024 became part of camp legend, a story of loss, hope, and the power of never giving up. And in that legend, Tony was at home once more. Ask ChatGPT. The years passed like slow-moving clouds over Pine Ridge Camp. In the early 1990s, the sheriff's office stamped cold case on Tony's file. Families returned to their lives, but the empty beds and silent trails at camp stayed carved in their minds. Sarah grew into a teenager, carrying Tony's memory with her every day. Emma and Mia became older caretakers for their mother, holding tight to any scrap of hope. The twins learned to laugh again, but they never went back to camp. Jacob moved. Away with his family. The forest around Pine Ridge remained quiet and unchanging, its secrets safe under the tall pines. In 2000, the camp director planted a row of young trees near the old mess hall. Each sapling marked an anniversary of the day Tony vanished. Counselors and parents returned for small ceremonies. They placed stones at each tree's base. Some carved Tony's name. Others prayed in silence. The camp still ran each summer, but the laughter sounded different, softer, more careful. New families came, unaware of the story that lingered in the air. For decades, reporters revisited the story now and then. An anniversary article in the local paper, a true crime blog post that gently retold the tale, asking readers if they had any fresh clues. A TV special on cold case breakthroughs highlighted Tony's disappearance without new leads. Blood samples from old evidence kits sat frozen in a vault. Photos faded on dusty shelves. The ranger's cabin remained locked, its door sealed by county order. Few remembered the gate latch Sarah had noticed back on that first night, but some counselors kept old notes tucked away. Then, in the spring of 2024, the FBI launched a national program to digitize and re-examine cold case evidence. Teams of technicians scanned paper files, photographed artifacts, and uploaded them into a new database. Genetic genealogy tools that had solved other long-closed cases were now offered too. Local law enforcement. An agent named Special Agent Kelly Thornton took a personal interest in Pine Ridge. Kelly had grown up loving true stories of persistence. When she saw Tony's case, she felt a tug at her heart. She read through every report, studying the old maps and photographs. One day, while reviewing a grainy photograph of the campfire log from 1985, Agent Thornton noticed something faint in the background. A partial fingerprint lay on the rough wood, a smudge barely visible. That print had been overlooked in the 1980s, when examiners lacked the tools to enhance such details. But with new digital imaging, the ridges of the print jumped into focus. Kelly carefully extracted the pattern and ran it through the FBI's National Fingerprint Database. For the first time, she got a possible Macha woman's print from a 2004 state identification card. The match pointed to a distant relative of a family living 200 miles away. When Kelly shared the result with her supervisor, they both sat quietly for a moment, weighing the chances of a false lead. But the print alignment was strong 12. Matching points, a reliable match by modern standards. The FBI opened a case file under their cold case unit. They traced the relative to a quiet home on a dead-end road near Grand Rapids. The family's name was Patterson. No one in the Patterson family had ever been a suspect in any crime. They attended church on Sundays. Their lives ordinary and unremarkable until now. Special Agent Thornton assembled a small team. They traveled to Pine Ridge Camp first, the place where the children had played and vanished. They walked the old trails, now overgrown and reclaimed by the forest. They paused at Eagle Rock and the narrow footbridge, retracing the steps of 7 brave children. They spoke with former counselors, now in their 60s and 70s, who shared memories of Tony's gentle laugh and careful drawings. One counselor handed Kelly a faded journal page from Tony's sketchbook, an oak tree drawn in fine pencil, the leaves mapped with tender care. With these memories in hand, the team drove to the Patterson residence. The house stood at the end of a gravel driveway surrounded by sprawling fields. They approached quietly in unmarked cars. 2 agents knocked on the front door. A middle-aged woman answered, surprised to see federal agents. They showed her badges and asked politely if she would come to the local FBI office to discuss a fingerprint match. The woman, Mrs. Patterson, her eyes wide, invited them inside. She sat at her kitchen table, hands folded over a cup of tea. Husband joined her, concern etched on his face. Agent Thornton explained the fingerprint evidence and the camp's history. She watched Mrs. Patterson's face flush, then grow pale. Never knew, Mrs. Patterson whispered. My print could link to something like this. The agents asked about the family's past vacations, visits. Anyone who might have traveled near Pine Ridge in 1985. Mrs. Patterson's husband remembered a cousin, a man named Carl, who had worked seasonal jobs in forests and parks in the 1980s. Carl passed away in 2005, but the Pattersons still had some of his journals and letters. When the Pattersons retrieved Carl's belongings, the agents found a worn leather journal tucked in a desk drawer. Its pages were yellowed and soft. In neat handwriting, Carl described a summer job at a lakeside camp in Michigan, wrote about 7 children who reminded him of his own lost youth. He admitted to an unsettling fascination with their drawing of Eagle Rock and to exploring the old ranger's cabin at night. One entry, dated July 22, 1985, described a storm that had caught him outside. He wrote that lightning struck a branch near the cabin, and I saw shadows moving in the trees. His trembling hand had scribbled a line, "I am afraid of what I might have done." The FBI team pressed on, carefully reading each line. They found a small sketch map of Pine Ridge grounds, with the ranger's cabin circled in red. Nearby, words read, "A place to hide. No one will look there." Toward the journal's end, Carl wrote of guilt and fear, but never confessed anything outright. A final line said, "I cannot live with this secret any longer," but the next page was blank. The journal ended suddenly, as if the writer left it behind in haste. Armed with Carl's journal and the fingerprint match, the FBI secured a search warrant for the ranger's cabin, now sealed and rarely visited. Agents arrived at dawn, the rising sun casting long shadows between the trees. They broke the lock and stepped inside. Dust motes floated in the air. Old maps and crates lay stacked against the walls. In one corner, they found a loose floorboard. Underneath, Tony's whistle pack lay wrapped in newspaper. Nearby, half-burned pages from Tony's sketchbook lay scattered as if tossed aside. Discovery stunned everyone. For nearly 40 years, that cabin had held Tony's belongings, hidden by the cousin who worked there. The whistle pack still smelled faintly of pine and earth. Agents carefully lifted each piece, sealing them in evidence bags. They notified Sarah and the other families. News spread like wildfire across social media and local news outlets. Suddenly, the story that had felt frozen in time blazed back to life. When Sarah heard the news, her heart pounded with a mix of relief and sorrow. She flew to Michigan to meet the FBI at the cabin. Standing at the entrance, she touched the doorframe, feeling the rough wood under her fingers. Inside, she knelt beside Tony's things. Emma and Mia stood behind her, tears in their eyes. The twins and Jacob joined, their grown faces etched with years of waiting. Sarah picked up the whistle pack and held it tight, imagining how Tony might have felt alone and frightened, yet brave enough to cling to something he made himself. Special Agent Thornton explained how the fingerprint led to Carl Patterson, and how the journal and hidden items proved he had been present at the cabin. That night, though Carl had died years ago, the evidence cleared a path to understanding. The FBI announced that while Tony's body had never been found, these discoveries brought the truth into the light. Families could finally close their eyes at night knowing what had happened. Back at the camp clearing, the trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches whispering in the wind. The FBI held a small ceremony, returning Tony's belongings to his family. Sarah spoke softly. "This cabin held our answers," she said. "Though it took 40 years, we found the clues that let us see the truth." Emma and Mia placed Tony's whistle pack under the young trees planted for each anniversary. The twins set down stones engraved with Carl's name, acknowledging the man who had carried a terrible secret as dusk fell. The family stood together at the edge of the old woods. Lanterns glowed softly in their hands. Sarah breathed in the pine-scented air and felt a lightness she had not known since that first night. The forest held both pain and healing now. The long years of waiting ended with the discovery of a simple trace, a fingerprint, a journal, a hidden pack. Those small pieces brought closure to shattered lives. And in the hush of the pines, the memory of 7 children who vanished in 1985 found rest at last. The first light after Tony's disappearance felt cold and hollow. Camp counselors and parents gathered at the clearing where the backpacks had been discovered. A hush fell over the group as Mr. Harris stepped forward, his face drawn with worry. He counted heads. Once more 6 children remained, each clutching a counselor's hand. Emma pressed Mia close, eyes wide and fearful. Sarah stood by their side, her heart pounding. but her voice steady as she answered questions about where they last saw Tony. Searchers fanned out into the woods. Some walked the muddy trails, flashlights swinging in the morning gloom. Others formed lines between the trees, calling Tony's name. Each voice echoed against the trunks, growing faint as it traveled deeper into the forest. Hikers from the nearby town arrived, joining the effort with keen eyes and sturdy boots. One volunteer brought his bloodhound, a gentle black dog whose long ears draped like velvet. The dog's nose pressed to the ground as its handler murmured, "Let's find him, buddy." Sarah watched from the edge of camp, her chest tight. She remembered how Tony loved patterns, the way tree bark formed rings, the ripples in creek water. She wondered if he might have followed the water's edge, hoping it would lead him home. With a counselor beside her, she knelt by the creek and whispered, "Tony, we're looking for you." She placed a small stick in the water to trace the current, imagining Tony guiding it with his gentle curiosity. By late morning, the lines of searchers had covered most of the familiar trails, but every cleared path led to more shadowed woods beyond.
Ow.
Volunteers stepped off the beaten track, pushing through brambles and low-hanging branches. The creek bed was scoured for signs, broken twigs, footprints, pieces of clothing. Counselors called out whenever they found something that might belong to Tony. A lone sandal caught on a root, a crumpled page torn from his sketchbook. But each time, the hope it sparked flickered out when closer inspection revealed it belonged to someone else. Parents huddled near the cabins, whispering in tight circles. One mother wept softly into her shawl. A father clenched his jaw, hands balled into fists. Camp director Mrs. Barnes paced, her eyes red from hours of sleepless worry. She spoke urgently into her cell phone, coordinating with the sheriff's office and the local fire department. Soon drones hovered overhead, tiny red lights blinking as they scanned the tree canopy. The sheriff promised a helicopter would join the search before dusk. Back at the cabins, Sarah kept the younger children close. She guided Emma and Mia through simple breathing exercises she'd learned in school when she felt anxious. "Breathe in slowly," she whispered, "and let the worry drift away." Together, they sat beneath the porch of the mess hall, where counselors offered hot cocoa and comfort blankets. The twins, usually full of mischief, sat quietly with their knees drawn up, eyes fixed on the fading search lines among the trees. As afternoon arrived, fatigue set in. Searchers slumped on fallen logs, poking at their muddy boots. Volunteers traded water bottles and granola bars. The fire dog, having traced no reliable scent, lay panting in the shade, tongue lolling. One deputy scratched his head. "He's too young to know the woods," he told a ringing cell. "He might have wandered off trail or hidden somewhere." The deputy frowned at a map, circling sections of the forest where no one had yet ventured. Meanwhile, the camp cook prepared meals for everyone involved. A long buffet table appeared. In the clearing, sandwiches, fruit, thermoses of soup. Volunteers lined up gratefully, plates in hand. When Sarah passed by, she paused and quietly thanked the cook. He nodded softly. "We'll find him," he said, eyes gentle but uncertain. Night crept back in before the search could reach its end. Torches flickered along the main trails as the helicopter's spotlight swept over the treetops. Campers too young or frightened were escorted to a safe area by counselors. Families whispered prayers under the falling stars. Sarah hugged Emma, tightly feeling the tremor of fear in her sister's small frame. She closed her eyes and imagined Tony tracing patterns in the dirt, following dappled light, always curious, always brave. The sheriff finally announced a pause to the search until dawn. He spoke kindly to the gathered group. "We'll rest and regroup. First light, we go back in strong." Volunteers set up a makeshift campsite near the ranger station. Lanterns glowed in clusters, and soft voices shared hopes and memories of Tony's gentle smile. Sarah lay on a cot, listening to the distant hoot of an owl. She thought of Tony's thoughtful stare at the creek, his soft laughter when the twins teased him. She clutched her blanket, promising silently to keep faith until he returned. When dawn broke again, mist hovered over the forest floor. Search. Dogs yipped and sniffed eagerly as their handlers called out, "Okay, let's go find Tony." Campers watched with solemn faces as the lines reformed, determination in every step. Sarah joined Ms. Rivera along the creek bank, scanning the stones. For something out of place, Emma and Mia perched on a log, their wide eyes following each movement in the trees. But as the sun climbed higher, the search began to falter. Trails led back to the same empty clearings. Every clue turned cold. Families exchanged exhausted glances, hope dimming in the morning light. The sheriff conferred with his deputies near the ranger station. It covered everything visible from the trails and streams. To delve deeper would mean bringing in specialized teams with advanced equipment, a major step that required planning. By midday, the search shifted to a grid pattern. Volunteers advanced in careful rows through the underbrush. But the woods were large and wild. Old fallen trees hid hollows where a child could easily disappear. Thick brambles snagged at clothes. Slowing progress, the sun beat down and water bottles emptied. Searchers paused to rehydrate and rest aching limbs. Sarah and the younger children retreated to the mess hall, where counselors offered juice and biscuits. The radio crackled with news updates. No sign yet of Tony. Outside, the camp director consoled families, tears in her eyes. The sheriff set up an information tent where relatives could check in and receive updates. On a chalkboard, he wrote, "Day 2 search update. No sightings. Expanding grid. Planning new teams." In the early evening, the sheriff gathered everyone under the porch of the ranger station. He spoke gently. "We believe Tony is still in the area. Tomorrow we bring in canine teams with night vision and thermal cameras. We won't give up." Families nodded, some wiping tears, others steeling themselves for another long day. That night, campfires glowed weakly in front of the cabins. Counselors tried to keep spirits up with stories and soft songs. But the laughter was muted, the fires crackle, unable to chase away the underlying dread. Sarah sat near Emma and Mia, humming a lullaby their mother used to sing. She looked at the stars, remembering Tony's fascination with patterns. She traced imaginary lines between the bright points. Maybe the stars would guide him home.
Yes.
Everyone drifted to sleep. The forest around camp lay quiet under the moon. Lanterns stood guard along the trails. The creek gurgled softly, carrying secrets downstream. And somewhere beyond the trees, a small boy with gentle eyes and a curious heart waited to be found. The second morning at Pine Ridge Summer Camp began with a softer light than the day before. A pale sun filtered through the pine needles, painting the cabin floors in delicate patterns. The children awoke to the distant sound of Mr. Harris's whistle. It was time for breakfast, and another day of adventure. Sarah stretched and slipped out of her bunk. Emma and Mia were still asleep, curled together like two small birds. Sarah straightened their blankets and whispered, "Wake up, sleepyheads." Mia stirred, blinking her big brown eyes. Emma sat up, brushing hair from her face, and smiled at Sarah. The cabin smelled of pine and fresh morning dew. Outside, the camp stirred to life, the faint laughter of the twins chasing a counselor, the clink of dishes from the mess hall, and the soft thump of a basketball on the far court. After breakfast, the 7 children gathered at the activity, bored. Today's highlight was the big nature hike, a longer trip than yesterday, ending at a hidden waterfall deep in the woods. The counselors gave each child a small backpack with water, a snack, and a bright whistle to blow if they ever felt lost. Sarah tugged the straps of her pack, feeling the weight of responsibility. She loved being the oldest, but she also felt the pressure to keep everyone safe. The group moved out under a clear sky. The trail was wide at first, winding through tall grass and wildflowers. Birds flitted overhead and squirrels darted between tree trunks. The children chatted about the waterfall, how cold its spray might feel, whether rainbow trout lurked beneath its pool, and if they could skip stones across the smooth rocks. Jacob bragged that he could throw a pebble farther than anyone. Alex and Aaron challenged him to a friendly contest. Tony walked alone for a moment, eyes down, drawing patterns in the dirt with his hiking stick. The deeper they went, the denser. The woods became... The path narrowed, and branches arched overhead like cathedral ribs. Sunlight broke through in thin beams, spotlighting patches of ferns and tiny blue flowers. Sarah noticed the air felt cooler here, as though the forest itself breathed around them. Emma squeezed her hand, and Sarah gave her a reassuring smile. They all trusted Sarah. She seemed to know the safest way. After about an hour, they came to a fork. One path led toward a steep ridge, the other curled down into a rocky gorge. The counselors paused to consult their map. Ms. Rivera pointed to the ridge trail. "We'll take this route to the waterfall," she said. "It's a little tougher, but it's faster and more fun." The children cheered. Jacob pumped his fist. The twins high-fived. Even Mia clapped, her teddy bear tucked under one arm. They climbed. The ridge trail was steep, and roots crisscrossed the ground like great snakes. Sarah led the way, careful where she placed her feet. Emma followed close, holding Mia's hand. Tony walked beside them, looking up at the treetops and inhaling the forest smell deeply. The twins raced ahead, giggling as they leaped from rock to rock. Jacob tried to keep pace with them, shouting, "Slow down, you two. I'm right behind." "You," halfway up. The sky darkened. Clouds gathered overhead, gray and heavy. A distant rumble of thunder made the children stop. Ms. Rivera scanned the sky. "Looks like rain might come," she warned. "Let's pick up the pace." The group quickened their steps, and the wind rustled the branches and a few drops of rain spattered on Sarah's forehead. She didn't mind. The first drops of a forest. Rain felt fresh, like someone had shaken a wet towel overhead. Suddenly a loud crack echoed above them, a branch breaking under weight. The twins had darted off the path and scrambled up a leaning pine. The branch jolted and splintered. The twins let out startled cries as the branch fell, thudding onto the trail. Everyone froze. Ms. Rivera ran toward the twins, pulling them back. To safety, the branch lay across the path, blocking their way. Rain began to pour harder, and thunder rolled closer. "We need to head back," Mr. Harris said, his voice firm. "This storm is coming in too fast." The children nodded, gratitude in their eyes. They turned around, following the ridge down. Rain stung their faces, and their clothes soaked through. The trail was slick with mud. Sarah slipped twice, but caught herself on a tree trunk. Emma and Mia stayed close to each other. The twins slowed, no longer racing but stepping carefully.
"Help me."
Jacob helped Tony across a muddy patch. Back on the lower trail, the rain eased into a gentle patter. The group reached a shallow creek crossing where wooden planks formed a narrow bridge. Emma hesitated at the edge. The wood looked wet and dark. Sarah said quietly, "I'll go first. Just watch my steps." She crossed steadily, arms out. Emma followed, breathing lightly. Mia held her hand tightly, her teddy bear forgotten in her backpack. Alex and Aaron and Jacob crossed in a line, joking quietly about slippery boots. When everyone was safely across, they heard a shout behind them. It was Ms. Rivera. "Wait," she cried. She knelt beside the bridge. A small pouch lay against a Rockachild's bright yellow whistle pack, the one they had given each camper. That morning, one whistle was missing. Mia patted her backpack and looked up with wide eyes. Her bear tugged at her arm as if to say, "What happened?" Mr. Harris counted heads. 7 walkers, 7 packs," he said slowly, "but we have only 6 whistles." The twins looked at each other, then at Jacob. Jacob checked his own gear. "Mine's here," he said. "So is mine." Emma unzipped her pack. "Here." Tony's pack was zipped tightly. He opened it and found his whistle. "I've got mine." It's that left Mia's. The group retraced their steps. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest sparkling wet. They followed footprints back to the bridge. Under the logs, half buried in mud, lay Mia's whistle pack. Tony bent down, fished it out with his stick, and gave it to her. Mia hugged it close. "Thank you," she whispered. The counselors gathered the children. "That was lucky," Ms. Rivera said. "We can't lose any more things." Her voice was calm, but Sarah saw worry in her eyes. They started back to camp, but the mood had shifted. The day's excitement gave way to a cautious quiet. The woods felt larger now, the trees more distant, as if they watched the children go. Sarah stayed at the front, scanning for any sign of trouble. She remembered the gate latch yesterday, Mr. Harris's warning at campfire, the ranger's cabin rumor. Something in her chest told her to pay attention. Back at camp, the children rinsed off in outdoor showers. Warm water cascaded over them, and the scent of soap mixed with pine. They changed into dry clothes and gathered for a simple lunch of sandwiches and fruit. Talk turned to the day's adventure, how brave they were, how close they came to the storm. Laughter returned, light and easy. But as they ate, a sudden shout came from the edge of the camp. A counselor ran toward the mess hall, face pale. Mr. Harris stood up, hat in hand. "Campers," he called, voice tight, "stay here." The children exchanged nervous glances. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Emma squeezed Sarah's hand. Mr. Harris reached the counselor. He whispered. The counselor's face went even paler. He darted away. Mr. Harris turned back to the group. "Some children didn't come back," he said, voice shaking. "This afternoon's hike. We waited at the waterfall, but only 6 came." A heavy silence fell. Mia dropped her sandwich. The twins looked at each other, breathing fast. Emma trembled. Jacob stood still, eyes wide. "Tony?" Sarah asked softly. She looked to where Tony sat, eating. He was not there. The counselor called again, and the group moved toward the cabins. Sarah led Emma and Mia, trying to be calm. They passed the empty showers and the row of backpacks hung on pegs. Only 6 packs were there. Sarah counted them silently, her heart pounding. They reached the cabin. Counselor stood outside, whispering. Mr. Harris held a clipboard, his pen trembling. Sarah saw a counselor kneeling by a tent, tears on her cheeks. She pointed. "Inside," Mr. Harris said. The children filed in, Emma gripping Mia. Sarah took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay steady. Inside the cabin, Tony's bunk was empty. His belongings were gone, the small sketchbook he always carried, the carved wooden whistle he made at Arts and Crafts. His bed was neatly made, as though he never even slept there. Emma let out a stifled cry. Mia covered her ears. The cabin felt cold and still. Outside, counselors sealed the trails. A search party formed. Campers too young to understand stood back, while older staff sounded whistles and called Tony's name. Sarah stood with the 6 remaining children. She wrapped arms around Emma and Mia. "He's lost," Sarah said. Voice low but firm, "but we won't stop until he's found." The camp director called the local sheriff's office. More counselors fetched flashlights and extra clothes. Parents were paged. The sun dipped low, turning the sky pink and gold. The laughter and fun of earlier turned to whispers and frantic questions. Where could he be? Did anyone see him last? What if he fell? Sarah closed her eyes, recalling the fork in the path, the broken branch, the lure of the ranger's cabin. She touched Emma's shoulder. "Let's stick together," she whispered. As night fell, torches and lanterns flickered along the trails. The search stretched into the dark woods, voices echoing. Sarah stayed by the cabin, watching the lights move like fireflies among the trees. Her chest felt tight, but she kept breathing. She would stay strong as the oldest, as the one who could help hold everyone's hope. The forest around camp was silent now, broken only by the distant calls of searchers. Sarah imagined Tony's small figure, maybe scared, maybe calling her. Names. She thought of his thoughtful eyes, the way he sketched patterns with his stick. The pine trees stood tall under the bright morning sun as the camp came to life. Tents in neat rows caught the light, their colored canvas glowing against the green forest. Birds chirped, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh pine and DMP earth. A narrow dirt road led to the heart of the camp, where a wooden sign read Pine Ridge Summer Camp. Its letters worn smooth by years of sun and rain. 7 children stepped out of the mess hall, trays of oatmeal and fresh fruit. In their hands, each face showed a mix of excitement and nerves. Sarah, the oldest at 12, pushed a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. She was quiet but strong, always ready to help others. Next to her, lively Jacob bounced on his heels, already planning which games he would win that day. Emma, shy and gentle, clutched her bowl close as she scanned the trees. hoping no one would call on her to speak during the morning assembly. Behind them, twins Alex and Aaron shared whispered jokes in a language only they understood there. Laughter bubbled out in soft bursts, blending with the morning chorus of birds. Mia, the youngest, only 8, peered around wide-eyed, marveling at the towering trunks and the bright blue sky. She held a small teddy bear, her comfort companion, even under the summer sun. And then there was Tony, lean and thoughtful, his eyes always watching as though he tried to remember every detail of this new, strange place. Counselors moved among the children, guiding them toward the clearing where a tall flagpole stood. Mr. Harris, a tall man with a gentle voice, tapped the pole's base and gave a small salute. "Good morning, campers," he called, his voice carrying. "Rise and shine, friends. Today we begin our first full day." The children answered in unison, their voices trembling with a mix of timidity and excitement. After the flag ceremony, the group headed toward cabins scattered along a winding path. Each cabin held 6 bunks, plaid blankets, and small wooden closets. The children hurried back for sunscreen and water bottles, eager to start their first activity, a nature hike to Eagle Rock. The counselors handed out maps and reminded everyone to stay together. "Stick close," said Ms. Rivera, her dark hair tied in a ponytail. "And remember, the woods are beautiful but can be tricky. Stay on the path." As the group set off, the trail dipped into a shaded glade. Pine needles muffled their footsteps, and shafts of light fell through the branches like golden ribbons. The air was cool and smelled of moss and wildflowers. Sarah pointed out a bright red mushroom growing at the base of an old oak. Emma knelt to look, her shyness giving way to wonder. Mia squealed softly when a squirrel darted across the path, her curly hair bouncing with the motion. The camp's legend floated in the children's minds as they walked. They had heard rumors about an abandoned ranger's cabin deep in the woods. Some claimed it was haunted. Others said a recluse once lived there, someone who disappeared without a trace. Jacob whispered the story to Aaron, whose eyes gleamed with mischief. "Bet you won't dare go inside," Aaron teased. Jacob glanced back at the dense thicket to one side. "Maybe later," he said, his grin daring them all to follow. By midday, the group reached a narrow wooden footbridge spanning a shallow creek. Water gurgled over smooth stones below. Counselors paused the group to check counts and let the children refill their water bottles. Tony watched the water swirl around a cluster of rocks, tracing tiny eddies with his finger. He seemed lost in thought, as if the creek held a secret he couldn't name. After lunch, they continued toward Eagle Rock. The trail climbed steadily, the trees thinning to reveal sweeping views of emerald forest and distant hills. At last, the rock appeared, a massive ledge of gray stone jutting out over the valley below. The children gathered at its edge, their faces lit by the sun. Sarah sat with her legs dangling, gazing at the far horizon. Emma stayed close to Mia, offering a small hand whenever her sister looked uncertain. Jacob and the twins raced along the rock's surface, pretending to be mountain climbers scaling a great peak. Ms. Rivera raised her hand for quiet. "This is a special place," she said softly. "Take a moment to feel how small we are in this big world." A hush fell. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a solemn hush that settled like a gentle promise. The children closed their eyes and breathed in the pure air, their hearts swelling with pride that they had climbed so high. On the way back, the forest looked different, more mysterious. Shadows lengthened, and the path seemed narrower. Sarah noticed the gate they had passed earlier, a simple wooden structure with a rusted latch. She frowned. Earlier, she had seen one counselor jiggle that latch and frown at a gap in the gate's post. She remembered Mr. Harris closing it more firmly than needed, as though he feared something slipping through. As dusk settled, the group returned to camp. Fireflies flickered in the clearing, and the first stars appeared overhead. Back at their cabins, the children fussed over sleeping arrangements. Emma tucked her blanket around Mia, who yawned and pressed her teddy bear close. Tony sat outside, drawing symbols in the dirt with a stick. Jacob and the twins chased fireflies, their laughter echoing in the night. Sarah watched them all, a protective spark in her chest. That evening, Round a crackling campfire, Mr. Harris told stories. Now, he spoke of the ranger's cabin again, but added a warning. Stay on the path and leave the cabin alone. Some things are better left untouched, he said, voice low. The firelight cast his face in flickering relief. The children leaned in, eyes wide. Mia clutched Emma's hand. Sarah felt a shiver, but not from cold. It was a caution in her bones, a quiet alert that this place held more than meets the eye. As the fire died down, the children were led back to their cabins. Lights clicked off one by one. The forest grew silent, save for the rustle of leaves. Sarah lay awake, staring at the flicker of moonlight through her tent. She remembered the latch on the gate, the empty ranger's cabin, and the warning from Mr. Harris. Something about the night felt charged as if the trees themselves held. Their breath, in the empty cabin corridor, the soft click of footsteps echoed. Tony was already asleep, his teddy bear tucked beside him. Jacob had forgotten his flashlight on the top bunk, the beam still cutting a thin line across the ceiling. The twins slept soundly, dreams weaving between their whispered secrets. Emma and Mia slept close, two hearts beating in quiet harmony. Sarah turned over, pulled her blanket tighter, and let her eyes close. Tomorrow would be another day of adventure. Maybe they would explore the creek or learn archery. But in the back of her mind, she kept one thought. Sometimes even in the happiest places, the shadows lingered just beyond the light. And summer camp, wonderful as it was, might hold a secret that would change everything.